Now let's talk about Cain in verses 2b to 5a. The word here, the term for offering is mina, not zeba. It's not a sacrifice, it's offering. Now if it's a sacrifice, you have to abide by certain prescriptions, right? Okay? But this is not a sacrifice, this is an offering. So wouldn't it be totally unfair of God to receive one offering and reject another offering? Both of them were done, hopefully with good intent. So what's going on here? And I want to tell you something about, I think you noticed by now, that this author is very meticulous about every word, every phrase, and every sentence. 그냥 하는 게 없어요. I'm amazed by that. So he cannot just be making a statement here. He has a reason for making that statement. It's like clue and hint. It's like an indicator sign that points to something. He's trying to tie all the pieces together somehow, right? My million-dollar question is this. Was it something about Abel's offering? That something about the quality of that offering that God was really into? And not Cain? Question that I'm asking is this. Let's say there was no particular difference between Cain and Abel's sacrifice. Let's say that. Could that be possible? That God could just favor somebody and not favor someone else?
안 되는데.
아니 그러니까 this is a matter of fairness. But can God be unfair?
I mean, yeah, sure, he's sovereign, right?
Right. Let's think in that line of thought right now. I want you to think for a moment, because it's one thing if we justify and say, wow, Abel gave this fattened portion off of this, so he must have had a real passion and desire to worship the Lord. Okay, we can make him a saint, right? Okay, that's easy if we do that. But what is hard is when we make Abel's sacrifice and Cain's sacrifice equivalent. Cain just worked with crops, so he offered what he had. And Abel, worked with flocks, so he offered what he had. And let's say both of them brought these offerings thinking that God is going to be pleased with them, right? And then what happens? God chooses one over the other. We need to read further than that, right? Let's read. Okay, 5b, right. Let's read that. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Right? 그럴 수밖에 없지, 그렇지? God just favored Abel over him, right? And he might be wondering, what's wrong with this picture? I've done my part, and why is God picking on me? Why is it making it difficult for me? I want to please God, and it seems like I could never please this God, right? Okay, so he was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, this is the interesting thing here. God doesn't just impartially just, say, I favor this person over the other. It seems like God is approaching Cain and trying to show him what the real lesson is about here. And he says, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Now, what is it talking about? I mean, you could get really frustrated with God. What? I'm trying to do what's right, God. And I could never please you. What do I have to do to please you?
No, I think 이거는 뭐라 그래야 되지? 하나님이 He wanted to take this as a teaching moment for Cain.
Yeah.
그리고 너무 인터랙트를 하고 있다는 게 느껴지고.
Right.
그리고 it seems like 저쪽에 다른 챕터에서도 그렇지만 it seems like his intention is not to just punish Cain, but he definitely gave him the chance to repent, right? Sin을 recognize 하고. 근데 이제 케인이 나가서 에이블을 죽인 거잖아요. 그리고 벌써 여기서 그 컨셉트가 들어오는 것 같은데요. 근데 벌써 이든에서는 쫓겨났지만 만약에 이때 케인이 I'm sorry가 I'm sorry 했으면 다시 또 뭔가 리커버리 됐었을 것 같아요. 그런 뉘앙스가 있는 것 같은데.
야, 이게 이게 어떠가 포인트 하려고 하는 게 혹시 그냥 이브의 그런 문제가 계속 이펙트가 계속 똑같은 게 하나님은 비슷하게 어프로치를 하시는데 이브한테도 이제 디자이어 하면서 죄의 영향이 있을 거니까 룰 오버 그다음 케인한테도 마찬가지로 그 이펙트가 이브의 이펙트가 가가지고 룰 오버 하라고 하나님은 똑같은 방식으로 접근하시는데 이제 그 이브랑 하나님과의 그 브레이크된 그런 릴레이션십이 케인한테도 계속 영향을 미치는 것 같아요. 이게 그게 그런 식으로 이걸 어떠가 말하려고 하는 게 아닌가. 이게. So if you think about it from a literary device, the author is saying basically Eve's got a problem. 근데 그 Eve의 problem을 딜링은 안 했잖아. Eve의 뭐 inner healing을 했든지 막 self-oriented 된 것에서 벗어나 못했다고. So what he's doing now through the narrative of Cain is actually Cain is Eve in that sense, and Eve, the lineage is linked to Cain. So 그러니까 이제 케인을 통해서 그거를 더 자세히 보여주는 거지. What's the problem here? What's the issue here? It's the same problem that Eve had. Now Cain's now have to deal with this. Somehow Eve's problem always she has to make things happen, right? She's the one who's trying to make it happen. She's trying to be like God, and she tried to solve that problem, right? Okay, and same thing now. She's got a son. She's got two sons. Now through her sons, now she wants to make things happen, right? Right? And so maybe through Cain's situation, God is showing the whole humanity how to break out of that vicious cycle, that chain reaction of being bound by self and self-will. Isn't that what the problem is? Human self-will? That's the problem, isn't it, actually? self-will이 필요하죠. 그런데 it's exactly the self-will that defeats us. Right? We call it ego, we call it self, we call it human will. 그게 참 중요하잖아요. 나도 willpower를 계속 저거 해야지. 뭐 I can put things to action. But at the same time, I realize it is my will that actually is the greatest enemy when it has to do with submission to God. Right? Do you remember long ago, Paul Cain had a real nice saying. I think it's partly because his name is Cain. So 이 Cain의 스토리 가지고 he used to say this often. Do you remember, dear? He said, God offends the mind to test our heart. 그런 말을 계속 했더라고. And I think he's referring to this story here. Like Cain was really offended, right? His mind was offended, right? I would be angry if I was Cain. How could God offend me like this, right? I'm doing the best I can. I'm giving a sacrifice. Yeah.
So 하나님이 he did not look with favor.
Yeah.
그게 무슨 뜻이죠?
뭐 그냥 간단하게 말하자면 그냥 he did not approve. Whatever reason that may be, it doesn't explain. The whole thing about this story is it doesn't explain anything.
그거를 favor를 주지 않는다는 거 implication이 뭐죠?
So let's say we're Cain. I offer something and God didn't accept that. 그러면 the next thing is, the wisest course is, okay, Lord, then I'm going to change my way of thinking and I'm going to offer this way. Would that be? 계속 이러면서 우리가 adjust 해 나가면 되는데 Cain is like turned off by God. Like, and 거기서 자기 에고가 나오는 거. How? What? God, who are you? Like, you know, like, you know, I'm my own God as well, right? Respect me. God, right? Elohim, right? And so I could tell, I don't know about you guys, but I can tell the emotion. I have that. I'm sure you have that too. You know?
제이미는 그런 거.
제이미는 그런 거 없을 거야.
She knows
You know?
better.
아니, we get upset, we get angry, we get jealous, we start comparing, and we feel like this is injustice. 당연히 그러죠. 그렇지 않으면 사람은 바보게. 그 바보가 하나 있어. He didn't get offended by anything. Like just say, like, oh, you want my birthright? Go take it. 나중에 가서 이제 he thought about it, he got upset. But 우리가 케인 같이, I think 솔직하게 케인의 그 이모션을 우리가 identify 했으면 좋겠다는 거지.
그러니까 어쨌든 케인이 이 이모션이 잘못됐다는 게 아닌 거구나 그럼.
No, 그거
choice after.
그 choice afterwards. 그래서 Paul Cain said, I think he was referring to this text. 자기 이름이 케인이니까 이게 얼마나 자기에게는 막 prophetic. 자기 이름이 케인이야. 케인의 처지가 되면 안 되잖아. 그러니까 he kept on saying over and over, God is in the business of offending our minds to truly test our hearts. 그러면 내가 여기서 offend 됐기 때문에 하나님께 그 anger, 그 다음에 내 brother에 대한 anger, 그 다음에 이제 lawless하게 내 brother 죽인단 말이야. 우리 한국의 멘탈리티는 너 죽고 나 죽자. 그런 심리. 그게 아니고 what is the way to live, God? What is the way to true worship, God? 오케이, 하나님이 나를 approve 안 했어. 그러면 그 다음 스텝은 내가 내 이고를 꺾고 그럼 다시 잘해보겠습니다. 해야 되잖아. Right? That's humility, and that's what human beings are supposed to do. Because God is perfect, and God doesn't just show us everything like one time around. He's like a great coach and great trainer. He says, nope, do it again. Nope, do it again. Nope, do it again. Do it again. Do it again. He has all the right to do that. And we're supposed to figure that out. So he doesn't give us all the answers like on the golden platter and say, oh yeah, I give you all that and you do it that way. Here, what is ambiguous is we don't have any idea what is pleasing to God and what is not. And then he says, he has the audacity to say, well, if you did the right thing, then wouldn't I be pleased with you? What? I don't know, this just brings up a lot of emotions within me too. But at the same time, I want to learn from this. I don't want to fall like Cain. I want to be as the Lord said. You know, be able to remember this, the sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you. That same desire. The same desire is that grasping that we talked about last time, right? 그걸 컨트롤하고 그걸 우리가 사로잡을 이제는 it's sin that's doing that. But God says you got to deal with it. I don't know how that's possible.
So 여기서 if you do what is right 했을 때 뭐가 right하다는 건가요?
그것도 없어 여기는. 그러니까 하나님은 everything's like in mystery, and He says, can you just point blank trust me and obey? 그리고 내가 이게 아니다 고쳐주면 trust again and then do it the right way, and you'll figure out as you go. But He's not giving us all those answers. And later on, we see Abraham making sacrifice of Isaac too. Do you remember? How that just totally blows your mind. What? You want me to, take the knife and cut through the heart of my own son? And by the way, what didn't make sense for Abraham was, this is the promised child, you said. And you want me to kill the promised child? You see, God offends. He's in the business of offending our minds. In America, this kind of message we can't make dent in the hearts of the people. Because we're all into like, wow, God has to be fair, God has to be this, God has to fit into our convenient way of thinking. No, God doesn't have to. I guess that's the story here. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Eve가 자기가 그렇게 해갖고 갈든 오브 이덴에서 쫓겨났잖아요.
Right.
Do you think 여기는 뭐 나오지 않겠지만
여기는 이제 쫓겨나지.
그다음부터 이브가 신을 완전히 디스파이스하고 세이튼을 완전히 디스파이스하고 그때부터 그런 초이스를 안 하려고 했을까요?
I'm not sure about that, but what we'll see, 이제 지금 우리가 4장이지만 이제 계속 5장, 6장 쭉 가면 we'll see two lineages. Those who belong to the godly and those who are ungodly. Right? 그게 이제 dichotomize 되는 거야. 그러면서 God slowly placing certain criteria. 이렇게 하는 것이 내 편이고 저렇게 하는 것이 저 편이라는 거예요. You know. So we'll see that eventually. But the author is right now he's just setting everything up. He started with Adam and Eve, and he didn't explain this kind of dynamic, right? What Adam and Eve were struggling through. Now through their son Cain, the author is trying to get more into the whole dynamic of sin. How sin happens, how self gets in the way, how self is in the business of trying to control, and how I have to do this. I have to be my own Lord. And God's saying, no. This is about lordship, if you think about it. He doesn't have to be accountable to anybody. In America, we're so used to, God, you better be accountable. we're 막 따져. And God says, no, I don't have to. How are they going to interpret this otherwise? Right? Okay, just hold on to that thought. Think about that. This, I think you could spend a lot of time just meditating on this dynamic. It was always a puzzle to me. What does this mean? How do I interpret this? But now I'm realizing this is something that we must constantly and deeply meditate on so that we don't become like Cain. So I think the author is saying this is the Cain's way. And you don't want to fall into that trap. So deeply meditate on this. When God offends your mind, submit to that. And say, okay, God, you offended my mind, but I'm not above you. I'm underneath you. So you can offend my mind. Over and over, you can do that. You have all the right to do that. Okay?
저희가 이제 어떤 죄 가운데서 어떻게 해야 되는지에 대한 또 방식을 조금 알려주는 힌트가 되지 않나 이것도요. 개인에 대한 이런 어프로치가 솔직히 룰 오버 이게 진짜 이너 스트러글에서 어떻게 해야 될지 지금 항상 뭐 헤매는 것 중에 하나인데 이런 죄 가운데서 뭔가 이제 예전에는 이제 아벨에만 페이버가 있다고 생각했는데 그냥 건 페이버지 어떻게 보면 정말 더 뭐 죄에 대한 그러니까 이펙트에 대한 죄의 어펙트에 대한 솔루션이라고는 생각이 안 들었었거든요.
So think about this. Cain here, at least in chapter 4, Cain is the main character here. You know that, right? This is not about Abel. We think it's about Abel. Abel just comes and he makes the offering and then he dies. And then of course his blood cries out, right? For justice, right? But that's the extent of that. This is really, the main character here is Cain. Not that the author is favoring Cain here, but he's using Cain as the case study so that we don't fall into this kind of Cain-likeness. Because later now, after this, he contrasts Cain's lineage with Seth's lineage. Seth is the new replacement for Abel, right? Okay. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Okay, sure.
여기 sin을 rule over 해야 된다고 그랬죠. 근데 nowadays we rule over sin by help of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
그리고 sin 하면
Right.
Jesus,한테 repent하고.
Yeah.
이때는
Yeah.
어떻게 rule over 하나요? Human will?
Well, 여기에 이제 sin이라고 나오지만 sin은 always involving ourself, right? 그러니까 내 self에 내 그 육적인 어떤 그 tendency가 있잖아. self-oriented, right? 그 self-orientation을 내가 꺾어야 된다는 거죠. 결국 that has to be crucified. There's no way we can
이 구약
possibly.
시대는 어떻게 그거를 꺾나요?
아니 근데 그거를 설명을 안 하지 여기서.
I see.
Yeah, they're not explained. This author is filled with all these questions that linger in our minds. He's not giving short answers. This is not question and answer series he's giving. He's making us think. Because 이걸 settle 안 하면 나는 죽는 거잖아요. 나는 cursed가 되잖아. Right? And that's how.
이거를 이 텐션을 지저스까지 끌고 가려고
Right.
그러는 거.
Right, I think so. I mean, you know.